Greetings, everyone. This is Alaya Ketani, and this is We Are Our Superhero podcast. This podcast is dedicated to the life-giving and sometimes life-saving experiences that both myself and my guests have lived in order to go beyond minimizing programming, minimizing beliefs programmed by societal, defeatist self-talk, and all the conditioning that we may have that keeps us from being our true superhero, and those qualities and experiences that bring that forward for us. Many people know me as a hypnotherapist, intuitive change agent, the facilitator, trainer, and mentor of the Superhero Woman training and women's emergence, as well as the founder and executive director of the 501c3 nonprofit Keeping All Women Safe, working for equality and increased safety for women, as well as reform to the unjust systems right here in the US, as well as around the world. These podcast episodes will be real, sometimes raw and deep, so take care of yourself in them. And many of you know, my life has been a demonstration of coming up against limits, being told there was no hope, and actualizing several different skills, practices, and components in order to be my own superhero, to survive and thrive again. I'm training other women in that program now. May what is shared be a source of great hope and inspiration to you when you need it most. May it free your mind and expand your heart. And now I'd like to introduce my guest for this episode, Gerald Collins. Gerald Collins was born with a congenital birth defect that caused blindness in his right eye and partial loss in his left eye also. Yet he did not let Coloboma define him, and he overcame every challenge that came his way. This was due in large part to the powerful influence his mom, who was legally blind from Coloboma herself, played in his life. Gerald never focused on what he couldn't do. Instead, he found ways to overcome and make it happen. He faced many trials growing up in rural Ohio. With the help of family, friends, and faith, he didn't let them keep him down. When he lost his mother, however, in 2011, suddenly to breast cancer, he went into a deep depression and grief. Gerald had suffered from depression from his teen years, but this was different. The overwhelming sadness almost cost him his marriage and his family. On a whim, Gerald decided to train to run a single 5K. It was through running Gerald found a new community, a renewed purpose, and way to continue on. Since 2012, Gerald has run multiple races, from the 1-miler to a 50K. He founded his own coaching business in 2023 to help others find their life's purpose and passion in running, and the way running taught him his. Welcome, Gerald. I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to join you.
So my understanding, I've just heard a little of your story, was that being born with this condition, did I say it right? You said
Coloboma.
Coloboma, at first as a child didn't seem like all that tragic or all that difficult. Is that right? Because you had your mother as an example, as a demonstration for you?
That's a good assessment of it. I mean, there were challenges. There were things that I
Certainly.
probably couldn't do or things that were frustrating, but I still to this day remember I was being seen by the State's Bureau of Visual Rehabilitative Services. The state of Ohio has an entire department, at least it did. I haven't interacted with them in years, but that would provide assistance to those who are visually impaired and would provide them assistance in school, assistance in living their lives. And it always aggravated me as a young kid. They'd go, "What can't you do?" And I would just sit there and go, "I don't know. I don't think about what I can't do."
Sure.
Because
Sure.
that was the philosophy my mom had put into me, was focus in on what you can And if there is something you can't, focus in on a way to do it. So I never sat and thought about what I couldn't do. Now, there were some things I knew, especially as I kept growing, that I couldn't do, but it was kind of like I don't focus on that. If you really force me to sit and think, really think about it, I could probably come up with something. But I knew there were things that I struggled with. I knew that, if I was sitting at the front of the class, I was sitting, you know, I knew there were things that I needed, but that was just, that's what I lived. That's what I needed. And that was in large part to my mom. And oddly enough, not only did my mom have it, but my grandfather had it. So it was a huge family influence from us. But it was just the limitations it caused. Yes, they were frustrating, but I was constantly reinforced to find ways to do it, find ways to do it. And my mom was a living example of just making it work, figuring out ways to make it work.
So then when you say starting at the age, was it age 11, you started to experience, um, what age did you start to experience what you considered depression?
I would probably pinpoint it at I say 16. I really don't have a definitive time because I had what at the time I didn't even know was depression. I didn't know there was a name for what I was experiencing. I was 23 when I first got diagnosed. They called it at that time dysthymia. I'd never heard of dysthymia. I'd never heard of, I mean, I'd heard of depression, but I'd never heard of this thing called dysthymia. And it was like a light bulb went off, and I went, oh, that explains a lot. Because my early teen years, 14, 15, 16, I had this just dull, if you will, sense of where I enjoyed life, but there'd be many days where I just didn't really have much motivation. It wasn't a stymie is not a full-fledged depression. It's more or less where if everyone else is running normally from like a line of 0 to 2, those of us with dysthymia, we're kind of like -1, -2. We're not really full-on clinical depression, but there's that underlying sense of, eh, I don't really don't really want to get up in the morning, or I just want to sleep in bed, or well, I go to a
Like an
party.
apathy,
Yeah,
becoming apathetic. You're
yeah,
apathetic
you
in life.
yeah, and
Was
you
there
see
was there a particular incident that you can track that started to cause this, or is it potentially the influence of the hormonal changes in teenage years? Or
it probably was hormonal again, since I really didn't really think of it. I just thought that was the way I was. I just thought that's the way my life was. At the time, I didn't even realize that it was something that was treatable. It was just kind of like for me, I just thought it was the facts of life, just the way that,
Mhm.
because I grew up also as a little bit of a nerd, a geek, and was picked on quite a bit growing up by other kids. And so that sense of not really fitting in, that sense of being in a crowd and just kind of, uh, I don't really belong here, or I'm not really sure this is the space for me. That negative output on life just is kind of what I thought was normal. I didn't realize that I didn't have to live that way.
And that was quite a shift from earlier years, it seems like.
It was. And the thing is, when I was in my element or when I was with friends, I kind of felt good, but it was like social settings. One of the challenges I faced was when I was probably somewhere between 10 and 13, my father lost his job. It just basically went in, okay, you're laid off now. And so that time frame, we didn't have a lot of income. We never went hungry, but my father was taking whatever odd jobs he could get, it's just whatever get. And so there were a lot of things that, because my mom was legally blind, she couldn't drive. And if dad was found a job, was out working, well, we lived about a mile to 2 miles away from the closest town, living on a major state route. It really wasn't the most conducive place to walk. So if he was at work, and a lot of times he may get a job on second shift or whatever he could get, we got stuck at home. So that we would go to church and we'd have that faith base, but a lot of other things throughout the week, either because we didn't have really transportation or we didn't have the income for lots of extracurriculars. My life consisted of basically either hanging out with church or friends, or I might find a way to go to a friend's house, but I didn't do a lot of things that a lot of my other colleagues did. And I didn't, I knew I was different and I knew I was being picked on, but until probably about 10 years ago, I didn't realize how much I wasn't doing because my parents tried the best to protect me from not getting to see that side of it.
Hmm.
And
Were you
so
still going to school during this time?
I was. And so I'd be picked up by the bus and I'd come home on the bus. That's why school and hanging out with some friends at school would be a positive influence. But basically, I might get home from school and then I wasn't really going out to do much the rest of the time. I'd be home.
Yeah, so that
And
would
so,
definitely have an impact on your state of being and your state of mind, as well
yeah,
as probably feeling and probably overhearing some conversations of the distress and current concern that your parents were in, especially, when a man loses his job. I mean, it's concerning for women and men, but men typically hold an identification of themselves through their career, and losing that can be shattering.
yes,
So picking up on that, it's fairly common knowledge that when we have some compromise into one of our senses, other senses become more sensitive. And I know for myself, I grew up, I could see, I could hear, I could walk, I could taste, I could all that, but I did have extrasensory perception. And so I have no doubt that there are many more senses than the typical. I don't know how many they say are the just, smelling, tasting. Um, so for you, would you consider yourself more of as a highly sensitive child and maybe adult now?
yeah. And that was especially so as a child. It's like I was very just to put it sensitive, I would be very sensitive to other people's input, other people's perspectives. And so for someone that was being bullied, I had a good self image or I knew who I was. But at the same time, when you're 9, 10, 11, 12 years old and you're getting picked on and you're getting just basically things happening. I mean, when I was in kindergarten, my kindergarten teacher took me and my kindergarten bully out into the hallway and decided to provide Fight Club in the middle of the school and basically said, okay, here, you two, I'm tired of you two just fight it out. I was not at that time, I wasn't the kid that would fight. So
Yeah.
basically, I was the person who was getting bullied, who was being taken by their teacher out into the hallway to be beat on by their bully. I don't know to this day what she was thinking. It was idiotic. And my parents ripped her and the school a new one when they found out
That's
what
good.
happened.
Yeah.
But
That's a
that,
traumatic event.
yeah,
That's a
exactly.
traumatic. Yeah. So school is not safe. It's not a safe zone. Yeah.
Not entirely, no.
Yeah. Gee. And so you entered this phase of apathy and struggled your way through it. What happened next? I mean, when you became 18, did you know what you wanted to do? Did you know that you wanted to go to college or not? Did you know, like, did you ever have a perception of I want to do this when I grow up? Because I
Yes,
didn't. I mean,
I did. I did. And that's kind of what led to me finally at 23 figuring out what was the thiamine and figured out depression was because what happened is I said I was a nerd. I was the person who was focusing on academics. So I was defined for me, I was the academic person. I was the elite person. I took a tour of a hospital laboratory when I was in 5th grade and decided that's what I want to do for a living. And I made that decision then, and I'm still working as a clinical laboratory scientist today, but I knew what I wanted to do and I worked on the grades of it. The strangest thing is I took a tour of the local vocational school at the time. And back in the late 80s, early 90s, vocational schools were for the kids who couldn't hack it academically. The perception was that vocational school was for the dumb kids. It was for the kids that didn't succeed academically. So they couldn't go to college. So they were going to get their vocational school and they were going to go there. So they pretty much made all of us in 10th grade take a tour of the vocational school. And I happened to notice that one of the courses they offered at that time was a 2-year program in medical laboratory. 5 years earlier, I decided that's what I wanted to do for a career. And so it just made sense to me that I'm going to spend the last 2 years of my high school career studying this. If come to find out I hate this, well, then I've only wasted or spent 2 years investing in this. And then I can move on to something else, either another vocation or move on to another college degree. It just made sense to me to spend 2 years in high school studying it. Then I also have increased knowledge to carry on with me to my college program, because to do this, you need a bachelor's degree. It was just a logical sense to me. My guidance counselor, when I told her what I was thinking, looked at me straight in the face and said, "You're kidding, right?" And I'm like, "No, this just
Why
makes
would
sense to
she
me."
say that? Because it was it because vocational school is second choice was lower
Mhm.
than?
Because they knew if one of their academic elite was going to the vocational school, that they couldn't just spin that as entirely the dumb kid school anymore. Because
Okay,
why would this smart kid be going to the dumb kid school? And for
I
them, it
see.
was just so out of the question that someone that was with their A student, or their academic student, one of their gifted children, would choose to go to vocational school. It just was outside of their realm of comprehension. To me, I'm going, it's the logical process. I know this is what I want to do. This is the first opportunity to really be exposed to it. Why wouldn't I?
It's so great that you knew what you wanted to do, and that came from touring the hospital?
It did. I don't even remember why we ended up in the hospital laboratory. I don't remember what the field trip's thought process was. We just, in 5th grade, toured a hospital laboratory, and I decided that I wanted to
It's
work
for
in the health
me.
field. And I liked
Yeah.
the laboratory at the time because, in 5th grade, I realized I didn't want to be a frontline worker, predominantly not because I didn't want to work with the patients, because I didn't want to have to deal with the emotional turmoil of dealing with the sick patients, losing patients. I didn't want to be a frontline worker because I
Right.
didn't think I could emotionally handle dealing with
Sure.
loss of patients. So for me, it was like, okay, I still get to be a part of the process, but I don't have to put myself out there emotionally. That
Now
was my thought process.
now did you need assistance reading, or was your eye that was less impacted able to take over?
I would sometimes need a little bit larger print, and especially when I was younger, and I still to this day use my cell phone for some of this. Sometimes, like at restaurants and stuff, the state provided me like basically it's a little mini telescope
Mhm.
where you could use it so you couldn't really see things on the menu. That's why I would sit up front towards the front. I would sometimes have them basically provide me with a little bit bigger printouts of things. So yeah, I did need some accommodation. And today you'll see me some restaurants like I can't really quite 100% see that menu back there. Let me
Yeah.
just take my cell phone, take a picture, and blow it up, and see what it says.
Heck, I need that sometimes. The print is so tiny on some things now. I don't know how anyone can
Yes.
really read it. And what about in your profession? Are you or do you have is everything coordinated for what you need, or is there very little that needs to be adapted?
Most of what I do in my profession is it's either blown up for the microscope. I mean, I do increase the resolution on the screen a little bit, but over the years, I've gotten a little bit better at identifying things. And I'll bring the monitor a little closer to me. Some people have it a little further away. I bring the monitor a little bit closer, just little adjustments like that. And like when you look at the microscope, it's magnifying it anyways, and so you learn to see. You learn what you're looking at, and it's large enough under the microscope that I can identify things, and I can very clearly identify things.
That's great. So, was there ever a time in childhood before we're not at the point yet where your mother
Sure.
became ill and passed, but was there ever a point where you went through the pity party? Why me? Why can't I be like the other kids? Um, did that ever circulate?
It did. I mean, there were quite a few times where it just, I dearly did have those raw emotions. It's like, it basically was, I mean, I would get over it and I'd work through it, but there were a lot of times that I just didn't quite understand why I had this, why I had this issue, or why, I was the odd person out.
Sure,
And there were quite a few days like that.
sure. Um, and then you had the presence of your mother, who was your
Yeah,
inspiration, right? I mean,
yeah.
I believe that there's lots of children who go through that. Most certainly, when coming in with a compromised in some physical way or mental way, and also, I know that I was a pretty sad little girl because my home was very um, rough. It was traumatic and at times violent, if not violent physically, then um, verbally. And um, I wondered why couldn't I have parents and a home life? Like, I had a friend named Lisa Hamburger, and she had the best parents. Her parents were Unitarians. They were so loving. Just walking into her house was, felt so safe and so loving. Um, I really, really dreaded going back home, but I knew my parents were very strict and controlling, and we had a 5 p.m. Back then they let kids out to play and you just had to be back. We knew the circumference of where we could go. Um, but one time I didn't come home in time and I was locked out of the house in the dark, and it was terrifying. And so I knew that was not a compromise. I had to come home. Um, but I think it's hard when you're a child, to understand feelings and circumstances, and we don't really have a very vast database of how many people are experiencing this too, and really know how to analyze it. um, I know I was aware that I had come from a very beautiful place and was suddenly plunked into that house. And I said to myself, if this is what this life's about, I'm not sticking around for it. And I was very clearly told, you're not allowed to end your life. If you do, you won't be successful and you'll be worse off. So then I said, well, then I better find out what life's about. And I was a very young girl. I said to myself, I better find out why I was created. And I remember asking myself, how do I know that word, created? I'm just a kid. But I started very, very young because there was no other
Yeah,
solution, right? So did you have
yeah.
that depth that other kids didn't have? Were you checking into the deeper side of life?
I think so. And a lot of it is because not only was I going through it, but both of my parents had came from some background and they were willing to share that background with me. My father, when he was in 10th grade, had a teacher slap him upside the head and rupture his eardrum. He basically dropped out of school around not within a year or two after that. And basically both my parents had a lot of struggles. My dad's struggles turned into, before I was born, thankfully, he turned to alcohol for to deal with his struggles, and he spent probably 2 or 3 years at least. He would say almost drunk every day. He was a functional alcoholic. He would just live his life drunk as a skunk. And mom had a lot of issues from basically being a poor economic family and struggles. So they both had basically came from some struggles in the past, and they both found faith about the same time and basically said, we're done with our past and we're going to move forward. And so they turned into the parents like your friend's house, but it was a conscious effort they made and said, we're
Mhm.
done living the life that we grew up in. We're done living the life that we struggled with. But one of the things that they were very open about was everything that they had been through. And then about the same time I was becoming a teenager, my grandfather, who we lived on the same property with my grandparents, because since I was 2.5 years old, my grandparents at the time didn't need someone to really live with them. They just needed someone nearby to kind of keep an eye on them. They could live independently, but they needed someone to stay with them. So from the time I was 2.5 years old, I lived on the other side of the driveway on the same property with my grandparents. And then my grandfather developed Alzheimer's, which
Um,
is a debilitating disease that I do
yes,
not wish on anyone, because
right.
I watched someone who I loved, cared for, was very active in my life, turn into an entirely different person,
Sure.
someone who not only did I not know, didn't know me. And there are some things that I said and did during that time frame that I regret, because I was 13. I didn't know any better.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
of
know,
course.
but I
Hopefully you forgive
watched
yourself of that now,
it.
right?
I have.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just youth, and I didn't realize exactly what was going on. And that's the danger of that disease. It
Yeah.
takes the person away slowly. It's not like they just
Sure.
wake up and they're a different person. You watch them slowly drift away. And it got to the point that we went out for my parents' anniversary, went out to dinner with their anniversary, and he was at the point that they still needed someone to stay with them. And my uncle at the time was here in the house with my grandmother and my grandfather. And my grandfather thought his own son was coming to court his mother. And my grandfather basically attacked him, thinking that this was some man coming in onto his house trying to date his wife. He didn't even recognize his own son.
Yeah, of course. So I'm
And then
sure that, oh, go ahead.
okay. And then I'm not sure how, but I ended up being around and being part of the process of my uncle and my mother spending the next 72 hours trying to find some place for him to go that was safe. And back in the mid 80s, there were not a lot of memory care facilities. They didn't really know that much about Alzheimer's. And so trying to find a safe facility to put someone into was not an easy task, and especially when
Sure,
you had to find it in 3 days.
sure. And so was one found for him?
A place was found. It ended up not being what I would consider a safe environment. He basically, within, I think it was 3 months, within 3 months after he went in, he ended up in the emergency room, to the point that we suspect another resident had beat him. And after, with that incident, he went to the emergency room, was admitted to the hospital, and he never made it back to facility or home
Mm,
after that. Those
yeah,
injuries and the trauma he sustained from that incident took his life.
yeah, that's so sorry about that. I'm sure that had a big impact on everyone. So then what age were you when your mother um, was diagnosed with breast cancer?
My mother was first diagnosed about, she would have been about 43. So I was probably teenager when
I
she was
see.
very first diagnosed, because she actually went through a first incident with breast cancer, beat it for 17 years, and then had it reappear.
I see. And that process was fairly quick as far as the being diagnosed again and starting treatment. And you had said she was faring well, and then suddenly,
Yeah,
uh so,
she had
go ahead.
she had she'd had her tumor markers going down, and she'd had some issues for about 3 months off and on. They would see a little piece of a tumor in her liver, then it would go away. Then they'd see a little piece in the liver and go away. But the whole time her tumor markers were decreasing. So it appeared from the exterior that her chemotherapy treatment, was being effective in eliminating the breast cancer this time around. Because she had received so much radiation in the first round, she was not eligible for any kind of radiation treatment. And they'd already done the lumpectomy. And this time, I think that, if I remember correctly, they did a mastectomy. But a lot of her initial treatments had been eliminated the first time. So pretty much what they were left to with this second version was a bunch of chemotherapy, but she was fully going through treatment. Her tumor markers were coming down. And it appeared that while she was struggling and it was a hard battle, it did appear that the battle was going in the right direction.
Except that we know that sometimes the actual chemotherapy kills people. And in her case, you said it was just a matter of a few days when she passed on. Is that right?
That is correct. She'd went in on a Wednesday for her chemotherapy treatment, and the oncology department basically said, you need to go to the ER. I'm not 100% sure what exactly triggered them because at the time I just wasn't thinking, didn't ask. But they sent her to the ER. They decided after her ER visit that she was done. She spoke with her hospice team on Thursday. She let me and my wife know that she was done with chemotherapy and that she was under hospice care on Friday, which was a huge blow. And she started deteriorating very quickly after that. By Saturday, she can only speak maybe 5 words, 6 word sentences. By Sunday, she can only speak 1 or 2 words, maybe three at the most at a time. And by Monday, she was pretty much catatonic. She was still here, but she really wasn't able to speak. She was just sort of existing, and she
Sure.
passed away late Monday night.
So let's shift the focus a bit on the fact that she was your inspiration your whole life up to this point. Now she had passed in a shockingly short time when you weren't expecting it, and it really flung you into a depression. How did this depression take form at that point? Were you still going to work? Were you speaking with your wife? And did you have children at the time?
I
Um,
did. I had a 5 year old daughter and a
mhm,
wife. And best way I can describe it is at that point, I had a mild depression. I'd had a depression when I first graduated college because I kind of had a mini midlife crisis. I just didn't know what the focus life was of that. But when I lost mom, it's like my entire life basically began going through the motions. I just didn't. I knew I had to go to work to pay the bills, but there was just really wasn't finding much joy in anything. My
so,
life was just sort of walking through the motions day to day, just existing.
right. So then, what period of time was it that you were like that? And when what you told me that your wife ushered the life-saving ultimatum.
Yet she did. That was a good year. Mom passed in May of 2011, and somewhere around March or April of 2012, after I had just spent the entire year sort of in this blackness. I had no music was something that carried me throughout most of my life. My mom was a semi-professional country western singer, and we grew up singing together. So when I lost her, I lost my singing partner and my desire to have music. With no music in my life, I basically just couldn't turn to the one, couldn't turn to one of the things that used to bring me joy and help bring me things through. So I just was in this total darkness. I was biting my daughter's head off. If she would ask me anything or just kind of do anything, I was snapping at her. I was snapping at my wife. And after about a year of this, my wife looked at me and said, honey, I love you, but I can't stand you. You have to do something, anything to deal with this grief you're going through. And you have to just find something. I don't care what it is, or else I'm gone. If you don't
Okay.
change, if you don't find something to change, I'm leaving you because I can't keep living like this.
So how did that initially feel? Was it an initial shock of like, whoa, this is desperate, and immediately starting to seek that thing? Or did it just take some time for you to actually react to that ultimatum?
I wasn't 100% surprised because, like I said, I knew I was in the darkness. I knew I was in the
Sure.
blackness. I had no, I mean, my life was, I felt kind of bad because I didn't feel like I was being a good enough father. I kind of knew I wasn't being a good enough father, but I didn't realize how much I was biting their heads off, how much I was being irritable. I knew I wasn't happy to be around because I wasn't happy, but I didn't realize until she said that. I just didn't realize just
So
how
th-
deep it had gotten.
so then how quickly did you start looking for what was going to scoop you out of this dark hole, and how did you find running?
To be honest, it was literally, I called it a whim because that's kind of what it was. I had always, for probably the last 5, 10 years before that, I had wanted to try and exercise. When I would go out to try and walk to get my heart rate up, I would have to walk really, really fast. So it was like, well, I've always thought about running a race. Let's
Did
give
you
that a
see a
try.
race advertised somewhere?
I literally just decided I wasn't even didn't even have a race in mind yet. This was just literally, okay, I'm gonna run a race. I'm gonna train. I went online, found a training plan to learn to run a mile. I hadn't even ran a mile. I didn't even know what I was doing. It was literally, it's like, well, let's try this. And
So it just popped
it
into your mind when you were
yeah,
walking and trying to boost up your heart rate. Had it come across your mind before at different times? Maybe I should stop walking and just like run or jog. Or this
I re-
seemed like one of these just out of nowhere inspirations in your mind.
I had always I remember probably about 5, 6 years before that, I'd been mesmerized how that a friend of mine, their pastor, had done a marathon. And I just sort of was enamored, if you will, by running. Not really, never thought of myself as a runner, never thought I'd be a runner. It was just, this was something that, well, it'll get me out of the house, it'll get me doing something. And
Yeah.
it was just a goal I fixated on. And so I spent, like I said, I went on, I think it was active.com, found a plan to learn to run a mile, mapped out a half a mile loop around my house from my front door. There was a half a mile loop, and I followed the plan to build up to run a mile. And once I figured out how to do a mile, figured I could run a mile, I went, okay, let's do the 5K. And the plan I found on active.com was 8 weeks out. And so I literally sat down and went, okay, what race is 8 weeks from now? Okay, the German Fest picnic in Dayton. That's what we're gonna train for. It was just
How did you
the
come
plan's eight
upon
weeks.
how did you come upon this website active.com? Were you just searching online about running?
Yeah,
How do I run?
yeah.
Okay.
It was just a general internet search. I knew nothing.
Did
Some
you find that as you were training and as you were accomplishing, okay, I can now run a mile, now let's see about the 5K. Did you feel your state of mind, your the darkness starting to lift? I mean, you're running, the energy is
yes,
moving, right? Physical,
yes,
somatic, moving the
yes,
body is very important. Breathing,
yes,
you're breathing more, that's also
yes,
moving the energy. So it's shifting your brain waves and
yes.
shifting your emotional state.
And at the
And
time, I didn't realize that physical activity has been shown over and over again to be a huge contributor to improving your mental state, and not just, and also getting outside. I mean, not only was it was the physical activity was making a difference, but it was getting outside, seeing the sunlight, getting
yeah,
exposed to the trees again, getting exposed to the birds again. I wasn't
nature,
just sitting at
yeah.
home mulling around. I was outside and enjoying the environment around me that I had been avoiding for so long. And somewheres in that 8 weeks, I also decided, well, it'd be a good idea to join the local running club. And when I did that, I began to meet other runners, and I found a community again. It was
So
the active.
it had its own momentum, like I often share
Yeah,
with clients. It's like a snowball coming down the mountain,
yeah,
gathering more and more snow. So once
yeah,
you started, first of all, it took a very significant ultimatum from your wife. So you had lost your mother. You weren't going to lose this family now that you had,
exactly,
your wife and your child. So
exactly.
it took that in order for you to even act on something that was going to be life-saving for you. But then once you started to engage it, the benefits started to kick in and it opened up other ideas. I'll join a club. Now you had new friends. Again, more improvement, more clearing, more
Yeah,
brainwave shifts. And at what point did you decide that you would become a coach in this?
that was about 2 years ago because I had spent probably 10 years, close to 10 years at that point, and I had been run all these different races, come across all these different people, and I knew how much running had given me. The things that I thought I could never do, I was doing. I'd never dreamed I'd be running a marathon one day, let alone 7 of them.
Wow.
And things that I thought were impossible, realized that one simple step, one simple movement made it possible again. And so I got the opportunity to work as an ambassador with 80/20 endurance and almost passed that up. I was like, I'm too busy for this. But I'm glad I just made the decision like, no, we need to do this. And then once spending probably a year with them and interacting with the founders and other individuals and learning more and more about the program, they decided that they were going to offer a endurance coaching certification. And I loved the principles of 80/20 endurance. I loved the founders of it. I loved the entire community. So it was a great way for me to then take what running had given me and be able to learn and be educated to be able to give that back to others. I had a lot of knowledge from my years of running, a lot of things not to do from mistakes I'd made, but it was an opportunity to grow and to now be able to turn that around and be able to give back to people what this sport, what this lifestyle has given me.
Yeah, and it's called RunRev Coaching. We'll put the links
Yes.
on my YouTube channel, but it's just runrevcoaching.com is the website, and Instagram and Facebook. This will all be on my YouTube channel. So aside from helping your running clients gain condition, how much from what you experienced are you able to also inspire and encourage them when perhaps they're feeling down or judging themselves or maybe even thinking of quitting?
That's one of the things, that's one of the reasons why I took me almost 7 months to figure this out. One of my 5 principles was about mindset. I was like, I know who I am and I know what I kind of know what I want to convey, but it took me a while to put it into a succinct version of, the 5 principles being mental health, faith, community, mindset, and readiness, which basically combines to, we're going to, I fully believe 100% you're going to have bad days. You're going to have days when things fall apart or you just don't feel like it. And one of the things I learned was it's sometimes just taking small steps helps snowball it. So maybe today you planned on running 30 minutes or you plan on walking for 30 minutes, but all you can do is 5. Okay, you got 5 minutes.
And that's
And
true
if
for
you,
everything.
yeah,
That's true
and
for
if,
everything. Yeah.
yeah, and if you
Yeah.
could take that 5 minutes and make that 5 minutes every day, by the end of the week, you've got over 2.5 to 3 hours of things you've done that you wouldn't have done otherwise. So part of what I learned and what I can convey is the fact that it's not about the big issues. It's about making the small steps. If I hadn't made that first small step just to get outside, I probably would have lost my wife and my family, which would have sent me into a further dark depression and it would just kind of spiral downwards. Sometimes breaking the cycle is just taking a small step and celebrating that small step, not looking at it as something like, oh, well, I only did this. One of the things I harp about is getting rid of the word only. When we're looking at what we're doing, it's very seldom, if ever, I only did this, I only did that, I only drank this amount of water today, or only did this, or no, get rid of the only and celebrate the fact you did something today,
Well,
whatever
actually,
that is.
what you're doing with that is exactly what I share with clients too, and that is, new neural pathways are created by repetition and
Yes,
emotional imprint. So
yes,
if you're feeling bad about yourself, you're creating a neural imprint of continuing to feel bad about yourself. But if you
yes,
celebrate your tiny step, now you're creating a positive neural pathway that's going to again bring you more momentum to want to do it again. You do it again, you celebrate it, you're going to do it again. And pretty soon it has its own self-fulfilling prophecy where you're doing it and doing it. But I have an important
absolutely.
question for you, Gerald,
Yes,
and it's because I know you're a man of faith. And even people of faith go through dark times, dark night of the soul, where we
yes,
are often stripped of almost everything and have to find, maybe for the first time or for a new time, who are we? What are we? What is our purpose right here and now? And if we come through that, it is life-saving, like your experience in your life. Do you believe that your higher self or God put this idea of running into your mind?
If you'd asked me that 10 years ago, I probably would have said no. But after having this time to look back on it, yeah, I really do. Because I don't think that I would have learned as much as I did. And for me, being a man of Christian faith, there are some phrases in the Bible that speak about running the race, running the race of endurance. And I'd read those my entire life. But after
Yeah,
spending some time racing and really running these long distance races, like, oh, all of a sudden the message that that was conveying to me became, I won't say more real, but it became a living thing all of a sudden.
right.
I truly understood what the passage was trying to convey because I had been through this. I had ran that 26-mile course. I'd ran that 4.5 to 5 hours
Right. It
on the road.
wasn't metaphorical anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting when we look at experiences that didn't work out and over time see that we were actually better off. For example, I had left this town I live in, Ashland, a few years ago. And um, when I came back about 2 years ago, I had a plan with a friend where I would be here for a year and then I would go use her place in another state as a base to rent a place, find a place to rent in the next state that was only an hour flight from her. This was the plan. Then I came back here. Circumstances changed. And at the same time, she called me and told me actually she meant that I could only use her house for a month, which meant I would drive all the way across country and would only have a month to find a rental in this other state. Right. And I knew this isn't
Yeah.
workable. This can't happen. I just made a whole life decision based on your promise to me. I was really upset at her. I was
Oh
also
yeah.
injured. I'd broken my foot and I was laying there. I wasn't allowed to even put any weight on it. So it was a terrible time to hear this news. However, the location where I was planning on living experienced a very serious natural disaster. I've already been in a natural disaster. I was in the floods in Boulder, Colorado in 2013, where I relocated because I was accepted into a double master's program that would have turned into licensing. And instead, I got there in time for the disastrous floods, had to run from a 30-foot wall of water and debris,
Oh,
was injured, and spent the next 2 years fighting for my life in a city where I knew no one, homeless, only the clothes on my back. It was a very traumatic experience. It took two
sounds like it.
years for me to be well enough to come back to Ashland. So if this plan, back to the original story, if this plan had worked out, where I had gotten a place in that other state, I would have been in that natural disaster. And really, the last thing I needed was another flood. I
That's the truth.
definitely did not need that. So, in a way, I was really grateful that she had been a crappy friend and broken her promise to me, and I'm thinking, I should send her an email and tell her I really appreciate that she broke her promise to me because it would have been very traumatic for me. And there's other ways too, small and large, that we can see in our lives. If we're just present enough, if we're right here
Yes.
in the here and now. And as you say, I say to myself sometimes when I'm not feeling motivated or I'm close to overwhelm, what's just the next best step? Just the
Yeah.
next best step. And I take that because life is more challenging for some than others, but I certainly get my
Yes.
share of all kinds of reactions, and specifically with my nonprofit. You would think working to help women's safety would only receive positive feedback, but I get a lot. I get threats, I get defamation, I get all kinds of things. And sometimes I feel like, why am I doing this? Right? Sometimes it's from women. Sometimes
Yeah.
women are And I say to myself, I'm working so hard for women. Why? So that I can get this vicious behavior, right? And so sometimes I just have to walk away and have my cry, and then coming back, it's like, well, just shift your focus and do whatever the next best thing is, usually for my private practice in this new superhero training program.
Yeah.
Your story is is a clear example of being your own superhero, and an inspired one where, yes, it took this very strong ultimatum from your wife, but then you had an inspiration that you weren't even recognizing where it came from. It was just like, I got to do something. And it turned into life-giving, life-saving, realizing that all the things you thought you couldn't do, you actually can. And
Yes.
now you still have your career, your laboratory career, but you have this full-on coaching practice. Can you coach people who are not in your physical vicinity? Do you see clients
Oh,
globally
yes.
as well?
Oh, yes. Yes. I see clients in the local area, but I can coach clients around the world with the wonders of the new Zoom technology like we're using
Yeah.
today and some of the wonderful online programming. I can coach anyone from around the world.
So what age do you have, one child or more than one child?
I have one child.
And what age is that child now, girl or boy?
It is a girl, and they will be
She is a
20.
girl.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they will be 20 years old in March.
And so how much of your inspiring story and your wisdom that you've gained is your grown child now receptive to and open to learning and hearing?
I think she's open to quite a bit. Yeah, she's had her own struggles in life, and she's coming out on the other side very strong herself. And I'll say that's her story to tell.
Sure.
But it's been it it's been interesting. But
Yeah.
I've very much kept an open relationship with her and have been very blessed to be able to be a guide for a lot of things she's dealt with throughout her life.
Yeah. So again, your coaching practice is runrevcoaching.com. You're on Instagram, you're on Facebook. I'm going to share all those links. What, if anything, would you like to concisely share with whoever's listening who's starting to feel inspired, but just doesn't know what would be the greatest pearls of wisdom to sum all this up that you right here and now would hope this person would truly hear from you?
Life is never over till it's over. Your
Mm,
future is still being written. And while things may sometimes seem adversity or you may doubt yourself, there is always going to be someone out there who's going to believe in you. Find that community, find what brings you joy. For me, it ended up being running. I believe 100% activity, keeping moving is what keeps us young. We grow old when we stop moving. Our bodies are meant to be moving, even if it's just walking to the mailbox and back in the house. Keeping moving at what you can each and every day and finding something or someone in your life that brings you joy and passion and is pursuing it. Even if it's just something small, even if it's just finding the
sure.
neighbor next door and sharing a cup of coffee, getting outside yourself and finding what your passion is. And if you're not sure what it is, look for people around you to help. I guarantee there's someone in your life and your influence that's willing to help you find something
Yeah.
that brings you passion.
Yeah. That's great. It actually made me feel emotional when you first started saying it, because it's great encouragement. It's encouragement for me. It's a great reminder for me and for everyone. So um, this will air, and I'll send you the links, and your links will be on my YouTube channel. For those of you listening who would like to um, uh, learn more about working with me in my private practice and my hypnotherapy practice, You can schedule a transformative free consultation call on my website, alchemizechange.com. Alchemize is an ancient process of turning base metal into gold, and my clients have golden opportunity of expanded mind, new skills, and actualized transformation. Also, the training program to become and actualize your superhero woman is alchemizechange.com/our superhero. I am holding a monthly live with Alaya, where women can come together in an online circle and talk about what matters most to us. The next one will be in September. And for the nonprofit, keepingallwomensafe.com is that website. Feel free to connect through that contact page, and also to purchase a pocket siren that we sell. It's the tiny little fundraiser that we do, and that's just about the only way we make money to continue existing. So, Gerald, it's been really wonderful speaking with you.
Likewise.
And I'm sure many, many people will gain inspiration and encouragement from listening to this. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. And thank you.